Aaron Judge has 10 more homers than anyone else in the major leagues. And on this date, the last time that happened was 1932. So we're talking about an exceptionally dangerous man. Why would you pitch to him? And yet we do it more and more often. I'm not sure where the analytics suggest it's not a good idea to walk somebody intentionally. Sometimes I think it's a great idea.
The Hall of Famer, Tim Kurkjian. And Tim, I got so much to get to today. We're talking about Aaron Judge. We're talking about Edwin Diaz, maybe being a Cy Young candidate. I want to talk about Pete Rose and Dennis Eckersley and get your Mount Rushmore for announcers. But first, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Buster. Everything is good.
And I've got something that's kind of like it's sticking to my craw a little bit. Can you, tell me if I'm completely wrong, which I know you're very comfortable doing.
You, Buster, something sticking in your craw? That would be a first.
So it's done on Sunday Night Baseball, okay? There are a couple situations. We had the Dodgers, we had the Padres. A couple situations in which Freddie Freeman comes to the plate against a right-handed pitcher with first base open. And I asked Eduardo Perez the first time that it happened, hey, would you think about walking Freeman here and pitching around him? And he's like, no, absolutely not. Freeman is retired in that situation. Later in the game, same situation. Right-handed pitcher, Freeman at the plate. They don't intentionally walk him, and he hits a single, and another run is scored, and the Dodgers pad their lead. We've seen Aaron Judge, down the stretch here, just doing unbelievable damage, and yet teams keep pitching to him, Tim. And I got to tell you, I don't understand. The last 19 games, he's hit 13 homers, 5 doubles. He's got 31 hits, 15 walks. He's got a slash line of .431 with a .551 on base percentage, a slugging percentage of 1,056, and they keep pitching to him, Tim. I don't get it. And I asked our friend Hembo this morning to look up the question of, how the intentional walk is being used in baseball today. And clearly, in this era of analytics, front office folks have decided, it's a bad idea to intentionally walk hitters. The intentional walk rate this year, Tim, is .09, as in one intentional walk every 10 games. As Hembo noted to me this morning, that's the lowest rate since 1930. I'm sorry. I don't get it. I don't know what numbers they're running, but I don't want to pitch to Freddie Freeman with first base open and 2 outs. I don't want to pitch to Aaron Judge if I don't have to. What's going on?
That's a good question, Buster. Freddie Freeman's leading the league in hits. He's hitting .320. He can get a hit as well as just about anybody in the game. I wouldn't pitch to him either. And you're right. We don't intentionally walk guys anymore. Remember, Willie McCovey had 45 intentional walks in the 1969 season when he was the MVP. Barry Bonds, of course, had 120 intentional walks in one season. The leader in walks in the American League that year didn't have as many walks total as Barry Bonds had intentional walks. But one of those years, I'll be wrong, I'll be right, 2017 or 19, the Astros had no intentional walks, their pitchers, the entire season. A.J. Hinch went through an entire year without intentionally walking another batter. And I think a very analytically driven organization like the Astros, and a very successful one, maybe has set the tone for this. But I'm with you. Aaron Judge has 10 more homers than anyone else in the major leagues. And on this date, the last time that happened was 1932. So we're talking about an exceptionally dangerous man. Why would you pitch to him? And yet we do it more and more often. I'm not sure where the analytics suggest it's not a good idea to walk somebody intentionally. Sometimes I think it's a great idea. Buster, 1980, I watched Earl Weaver walk George Brett with runners at first and second and 2 outs in the 9th inning. First and second, third base was open. He walked George Brett to load the bases. Tim Stoddard walked the next guy in 4 pitches, and the game was over. But Earl, smarter than everyone, said, I'm not pitching to that guy. And sometimes I'm totally with it.
Yeah, and what did George Brett hit that year? He hit .390. He was killing everything, right?
Right.
And that's the way it is with Aaron Judge now. And look, Anthony Rizzo has been terrific this year. He's been out in recent days because of a back issue. It's possible he's going to play later today. Anthony Rizzo's been terrific this year, batting behind Judge. In recent days, Matt Carpenter's filled in, and before he got hurt last night, he's been terrific. None of them are doing what Aaron Judge is doing, and especially with 2 outs. I'm not pitching the guy. That's what, and look, Bob Melvin, the Padres manager who made that choice to not pitch around Freddie Freeman the other day, he knows, 10 times more baseball than I even sniffed. But I'd love to have a conversation with him next time I see him, because I feel like that decision and the sport-wide decision not to issue intentional walks is based on on a larger sample size, and the general premise that you don't want to put runners on base, because the more likely that when you put runners on base, the more likely it is you're going to give up. But in that situation, like with Freddie Freeman the other day, there are 2 outs. If you're the Padres at that point, I think they were down 4-0. You're just trying to keep the Dodgers from scoring again. I'd rather pitch to Will Smith, as good as he is, than Freddie Freeman.
Yeah, but on the flip side, Buster, Roger Maris at 61 did not get intentionally walked during a 61 home run season. So he was the MVP in 60. He was the MVP in 61 and got no intentional walks. And granted, that was one of the great offensive teams of all time. And that was Mickey Mantle in the order with him, not to mention surrounded by hitters. But the intentional walk has always really interested me. And one reason it's way, way down, I would guess this year, is that pitchers aren't batting anywhere anymore. So there's no reason to intentionally walk the 8th hitter to get to the pitcher. So maybe that's why things are going down even more.
Yeah, maybe that's the reason. I think this weekend, I know this weekend we've got the Yankees and the Red Sox. So I'm going to talk to Aaron Boone and Alex Cora about why that's gone away. Because I did ask Aaron Boone last month about the idea that people are pitching to Judge. And of course, Boone's not going to throw gasoline on that. He wants to keep that conversation down. And all I'll tell you, Tim, is he gave me a little grin. Like he knows, like people are pitching to Judge and we don't get it. He's on a pace now to hit 63 home runs this year. And the conversation about whether or not he should be MVP is going to continue to burble as we go down the stretch, as he continues to chase 60 homers. I know how you feel. I think there's a parallel conversation about Edwin Diaz and the Cy Young Award and whether or not he should win, because, last year we saw the precedent that with Shohei Ohtani being such a successful two-way player, voters voted for Ohtani over Vlad Jr. And in the last 20 years, really since Eric Gagne, voters, I think, have followed the use of analytics in the sport and believing that volume is so important in determining the Cy Young Award. Zach Greinke had as good a season as we've ever seen from any relief pitcher in 2016. Tim, he didn't come close to winning the Cy Young Award that year. So what do you think about Edwin Diaz for Cy? Do you still think Aaron Judge is the MVP in the American League?
Aaron Judge is still the MVP, and I'm going to disagree with you, Buster. Shohei Ohtani is not going to catch him this year. Okay. Ohtani's great. He's still remarkable, but he's not going to win. Aaron Judge is going to be the best player on the best team. He's going to have a historic season, and I think he's going to win the MVP, and I think he should win the MVP. As for Edwin Diaz, sorry, this guy has been unbelievable. He's striking out 50% of the guys he faces. He's striking out 18 guys per 9 innings. It's absurd. When he comes in, the game is over. That stuff is so ridiculously good right now. And the energy he brings. Buster, have we ever seen a recovery within a couple season span that guy has made from his first year in New York when he had some troubles? Now he's a god there when he comes into the games. It is so cool. However, Sandy Alcantara is still the Cy Young winner in the National League, period. And it's because of the volume that you're talking about. There's no other way around this. If a guy throws 250 innings, which Alcantara might get to, and another guy throws 60 innings, I'm sorry, that's the discussion. But you and I disagree on this. You have Mariano Rivera as the second best Yankee ever, or third best Yankee ever. And I love him. He's the greatest closer ever. But you can't place him above a center fielder who plays every day. And I don't think you can take a reliever and put him above a starting pitcher who is having a spectacular season and is going to throw at least 150 to 200 innings more than a reliever. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I would have had Britton as the Cy Young Award winner in 2016. He was just ridiculous that year for the Orioles. Díaz is ridiculous this year. In his last 18 appearances, 63 batters faced, 38 strikeouts. Let me repeat that. 38 strikeouts among the last 63 batters faced. And in that time, he's allowed 1 walk and 7 hits. Opponents have, in that stretch of 18 appearances, an OPS of 258. And you're right about the energy level that he brings when he comes into the game. The fans are totally into the trumpets playing. I know I covered the Yankees, Mariano Rivera, when they were playing Enter Sandman for him, Hell's Bells for Trevor Hoffman. I think in terms of the pure energy that the music, the player bring into the mound in the 9th inning, we haven't seen it before. What do you think?
Yeah, and he's, he could easily finish second in the Cy Young voting and get a ton of MVP votes. I mean, he could finish, 6th in the MVP voting because of what he means now to the Mets. They feel like that game is over when they bring him in. And Buck brought him in the 8th inning the other day, and the game was over. So it's been a spectacular season. I love it when he comes in the game. And I'll say it one more time, Buster, how does anyone get a hit off of that stuff? Anybody. It's ridiculous.
All right, what do we make of the Padres, who won the first game with their revamped lineup with Juan Soto, with Brandon Drury, and they basically haven't been able to win since, and they're not scoring runs? What do we make of it?
It's confusing. They lost 4 straight games by 4 or more runs, which is pretty hard to do if you think about it. They've been shut out now, back-to-back games for the first time since 2017. I am not going to panic about this if I'm a Padre fan, even though I can tell you there's widespread panic going on already. They're going to get Tatis Jr. back. They're going to have a really good offensive team. They can really pitch, including out of the bullpen, and they're going to make the playoffs. However, the Braves are better than the Padres are. The Mets are much better than the Padres are right now, and the Dodgers are way better than the Padres are right now. So the moves they made, I thought, were great and necessary because the Dodgers are going to be great for years to come. The only way the Padres could compete with them was to do something dramatic, and they did more than one dramatic thing. So don't tell me they made a mistake here. This is baseball. This is not like acquiring Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. They touch the ball on every possession. It takes time for baseball players to get going. I promise you at some point in the next 2 months, we're going to go, wow, that Padre offense is just as good as we thought it would be. It just hasn't happened yet. That's the beauty of baseball.
So for the record, Tim declared that they're going to make the playoffs. I just want to point out, this kind of reminds me of when I declared the National League East race over, when the Mets had a 10.5 game lead and then the Braves cut it to a half game. Like, you get your ebbs and flows. At the moment, the Padres are sitting 6th in the National League standings. They are a game ahead of the Brewers at this point. So they're kind of clinging to it, but you're confident that they're going to get in.
Yeah, and this is the same guy who has pointed out last year the Padres had the best record in baseball after 50 games, and not only didn't make the playoffs, they didn't even finish above 500. I'm telling you, though, the difference is Juan Soto, Josh Bell, Josh Hader, and maybe more than anything, Bob Melvin's in charge of that team. Do you really think that Bob Melvin is going to allow a team with that kind of talent to fold down the stretch like they did last year? I'm not buying it. Sorry.
All right. There is one massive wild card. I think you'll agree with me on this, a major X factor, and that is Fernando Tatis Jr. when he comes back. Through the years, when hitters come back from wrist injuries, you don't get consistent results. You just never know until they actually get into games, correct?
Correct. And you're right, Buster. And again, I'm going back on what I said 5 seconds ago, but if he's not right when he comes back, then everything changes again. I mean, what we're basing all of this on is Tatis, Soto, Machado, and Josh Bell hitting 1, 2, 3, 4 with others, including Jake Cronenworth, following. But if Tatis comes back and he can't play shortstop, or they have to put him in center field, or most important, he doesn't hit, then the whole equation changes again.
And I agree with you. I think the Padres make the playoffs. I think it does take some time. I think Soto will settle in and they'll start to score runs. That kid is so impressive. He's 23 years old, and I can call him a kid because I'm a lot older than that, Tim. But just being around him over the weekend before we had Dodgers and Padres, and being reminded of his approach at the plate when he played that night, and to hear the backstories on sort of how he's ingratiated himself with the team. Initially they put him in the 2-hole, then he moved to the 3-hole, and then Josh Bell basically talked to him and said, "Look, this lineup will be better. You'll get more protection if you hit in the 2-hole," and so that's where he is. I love listening to him on the mic. Tell me about Juan Soto through your eyes as someone who's been around players for a lot of years.
Well, again, I live in the D.C. area, so I used to go to the Nationals games all the time, and I was always just amazed at how mature he was at 19 years old playing in the big leagues. Mark Reynolds, one of our favorite people, once looked at me, and this is, 4 years ago, and he goes, "I can't believe the plate discipline this guy has at 19. He goes, "I've never for one day had that kind of plate discipline in my life. And I'm 34 years old," he said. "This guy is 19. He said, "I've never seen a kid who understands and commands the strike zone like he does at this age." And of course, he's still got it. Buster, he's walked 469 times in his career, and he's 23 years old. The key will be, of course, does he expand that strike zone just a tiny bit once in a while if he needs to drive in a run, knowing there are all sorts of good hitters in this lineup. I think he's going to get more pitches to hit, and I think he's going to be an even better offensive player than he has to this point, and that is really saying something.
All right. How about the Orioles? They win the first game of that series against the Toronto Blue Jays. Just keep rolling. They trade Mancini. They trade their closer. They keep on rolling.
It's an amazing story. I'm going there tonight just to see what the heck is going on here and how they can be doing this. But just look at the guys who hit homers last night. I mean, they got 3 guys. They got a bunch of guys with 10 or more homers. They don't have those spectacular offensive players, but they find a way to score runs. Felix Bautista closed last night because Jorge Lopez is gone. They're starting pitching. Their ERA in the month of August, Buster, I know we just started the month, is right around 2. This was a team with historically bad pitching last year, and now it's pretty darn good. So the story is tremendous, and Brandon Hyde deserves a lot of credit. He took a lot of losses. His 1-loss record looks horrendous, and they're staying with him because when they get good, he deserves to be there. And right now, they're pretty good.
Yeah, and I love it for him, the fact that he's there as they turn the corner and they're having success, because he earned that. I mean, he absolutely weathered some lean years there. That's a great story. A not great story over the weekend. Pete Rose going back to Philadelphia in his first appearance in the field since the franchise scrapped 2017 plans to honor him because of a woman's allegation. She had a sexual relationship with him when she was a minor. Here's Pete Rose being asked about that.
You weren't here, but you were asked before the game about how you thought some of the sexual allegations against you in 2017 might affect the way fans or women view.
All right. I want to tell you one more time. I'm here for the Philly fans. I'm here for my teammates. Okay. I'm here for the Philly organization. And who cares what happened 50 years ago? You weren't even born. So you shouldn't be talking about it because you weren't born. And if you don't know a damn thing about it, don't talk about it.
So before that, Tim, Rose was asked by Alex Coffey, terrific writer for the Philadelphia Inquirer, about whether it was appropriate for him to be there, given that the revelation that the woman made about the sexual relationship with him. And his response to her was, "It was 55 years ago, babe." And Rose later asked her if he had offended her and offered to sign 1,000 baseballs for forgiveness. Tim, absorbing all this and the stuff he said on air, which had to be, delayed, 7-second delay and bleeped out. I got to be honest, I don't know why teams invite him back to ballparks anymore, because he always steps in it no matter what, no matter what situation you put him in.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. His timing as a player was impeccable, and his timing since he's retired could not be worse. Unfortunately for everyone around him, he says the wrong thing at the wrong time all the time. This is not a one-time thing, and it really, really hurt that return to Philadelphia for those other guys, because he became the story because he said and did the wrong thing at the wrong time. It's a shame.
Yeah, and I can tell you this, some of the players who were with him with the Reds back in the day, that for years they've chafed at this whole conversation about Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame, because it comes up every time that they're asked about the Hall of Fame, about Pete. The conversation is not about the greatness of that team they played on. It's not about individuals on the team other than Pete Rose. And maybe it's time for Pete Rose to just stay away, because he creates these situations all the time. And I got to say, I felt bad for Alex Coffey as well, because she's just asked very direct questions of Pete Rose, and he could have handled them any way he wanted them, but he handled them badly. And then when this was placed on Twitter, Twitter followers going after her, Tim. She didn't deserve that.
No, she asked the correct question, and the context of the question was correct, given that there was a delay in Pete Rose returning to Philadelphia because of this issue, and all she did was bring up the issues. So she was very much in the right for asking the question, and she asked it properly, and she should not be slammed for that.
No, and the idiots who were slamming her on social media, I mean, they're a joke. The way they responded to her asking that question. All right, I want to ask you about Jason Heyward and his legacy with the Chicago Cubs. We heard from Jed Hoyer yesterday that the Cubs and Heyward have agreed that this will be his last season with the team. He's under contract through 2023, but they've decided to let him go. He's 32 years old. Jed Hoyer says he wants to give him a chance to land with another team. So what do you make of all this?
Well, I'm not surprised, and I think it's the right move, because I think Jason Heyward needs to go somewhere else if he's going to resurrect his career. He will be known as one of the best defensive outfielders of his time. He's a great teammate. We all know that. And the famous speech, short as it was, during the rain delay in 2016 was important. And he stepped forward and said a few words, and I think it helped the Cubs win the World Series for the first time in over 100 years. But he hasn't been the offensive player we thought he would be. Maybe if he goes somewhere else, somebody else can take that swing, which is a complicated swing with a lot of moving parts, and help him fix it. But I'm okay with the Cubs, what they're doing. They are rebuilding that team, and maybe it's time to move on without him, and maybe this will help him by moving him on.
So when he was early in his struggles, I think this was still back when he was with the Cardinals, I asked a major league reliever who was often brought in to face Heyward about it. What do you see? And this reliever, Tim, described what was going on with Heyward's swing so simply that it was stunning to me. He talked about how Heyward cocked his wrist, and as the ball is being thrown to the plate, how he would tilt his wrist forward. And then he just didn't have enough time to recover from that. And he said, you're done. Once you do that going forward, you can't recover in time to be able to react to a good fastball. And then subsequently in watching him, I'm like, that guy is right on it. And Jason, adapted his stance. He moved up in the box. He would move back in the box. But he could never overcome that, which is a reminder to me of how difficult it is to hit.
Yeah. And, Dick Allen used to do that. Gary Sheffield used to do that. But those are two of the best hitters and strongest men we've ever seen. I always looked at quiet hands at the plate, Paul Molitor, Mike Piazza, and the quieter, the better with your hands for the most part. And there was just too much going on with Jason Heyward. And you're right. Maybe that tilt, maybe he just wasn't strong enough or good enough to get the bat back. I mean, Sheffield did the same thing. He waggled that thing, but he always got the barrel to the ball in the hitting position. And there's a big difference there.
We got news yesterday that Dennis Eckersley leaving the Nesson booth. He, of course, has been a broadcaster of Red Sox games for almost 20 years. I felt, Tim, when I've listened to Eck, who I love, that what you heard from him was the sincere type of response that you would hear from a lot of players if you put a microphone in the dugout, because he was always amazed, always wowed, always invested in what he was seeing on the field. How would you describe it as an announcer?
He was a great announcer because you're exactly right, Buster. He talked on the air exactly like he talked to you in person, which I think is always kind of the idea. If you meet somebody and they say, wow, you talk on the air just like you do in person, that's the idea. That's the sincerity and the genuine nature of Dennis Eckersley. And he's the most honest guy in the world. He takes people on. He's not afraid. He's hilarious. I think we're going to miss him terribly in the broadcast booth. I will miss him being around the ballpark because he's so funny, but he's so honest and he just doesn't care, meaning this is who I am. I'm going to say what I think. And he's always done it with a good smile on his face.
Which takes us to our last item of the day. That would be a Bleacher tweet from G. Franco, 32, who asked in the aftermath of Vin Scully's death about baseball's Mount Rushmore broadcasters. He writes that we can all agree that Scully and Harry Carey are on the Mount Rushmore. Who else would make it, Tim? Who are the other two in your eyes?
Well, Jack Buck's got to be on there. Can't tell you how many times, Buster, in college, I would get in my Datsun B210 and drive to a certain spot on a Saturday night because I could get the Cardinal games on KMLX and I could listen to Jack Buck, but I could only listen to him from a certain parking spot in the long-term parking at the University of Maryland. That's what I used to do to listen to Jack Buck. That voice was unmistakable, and he, of course, has been a part of some of the greatest calls ever. Fourth would be, and again, I'm dating myself here because Red Barber probably belongs on this list because he preceded so many great ones, but Ernie Harwell is on the list for me. And I know I'm stealing him from you, Buster, but I would have put him on anyway. Ernie loved the game as much as anybody, and he just had such a gentle nature on the air. I hope this story is okay. But when Tiger Stadium was closing, I went to Ernie and I said, Ernie, what type of memorabilia are you going to take from all your days at Tiger Stadium? And he said, I'm going to take the urinal from the visiting clubhouse. And I said, what? Why would you pick that? And he goes, well, it's very personal. And every great player in the history of the American League used it. And he said, I'm going to get it all cleaned up and I'm going to take it home and make it into a planter for my wife. And that's precisely what he did. That's Ernie Harwell. And that's one reason I have him in my Mount Rushmore of broadcasters.
All right. Among current broadcasters, who do you think has the best chance to crack that top four?
Well, John Miller, again, your guy, my guy. John Miller and I covered the Orioles together for several years, and we would go out after games, the writers and John and a few others, and he made us laugh so many times. First of all, that voice is absolutely perfect. He's also hysterically funny. And since Vin Scully's the greatest of all time, I heard John Miller do Vin Scully in Japanese, and it was the single funniest thing I've ever heard. Him doing Vin Scully doing a game in Japanese, and he would do that with other broadcasters. John is an all-timer, and he started doing games when he was like 24 years old. You know, he covered Carl Yastrzemski on an everyday basis. And now he's covering Mike Yastrzemski, his grandson, on an everyday basis. John recently told me, I have to be the only guy that's ever covered a grandfather and a grandson on an everyday basis. And I think he might be right.
I would love to tell you that you're wrong, but I think your top five of the broadcasters are dead on. As time goes on, we'll see if John Miller breaks into those top four. All right, Tim, thanks for doing this.
Okay, Buster, see you.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.